Okay, so we are engaging in a new project here. It's almost summer. Last year I removed what was remaining of the AC. When I bought the truck, the AC compressor was not on it. There was no brackets. And the evaporator and accumulator were shot. So I removed everything just to get it up and running and to repair a few things in the plenum. And so now I'm at the point where I've gotten all the brackets, and so I have all the brackets. I think that's where I left off before the battery died. And I still have some hoses to get. I've got some parts arriving, but I'm going to start prepping the truck today. It's going to be probably about a week or so. I'm giving myself some leeway here. Got a brand new idler pulley here. This is the brace, and this is the AC bracket. This AC bracket came off the 351M that I bought to have as a spare. So this and this go together, and then this goes on the brace. So let's look at the engine. Okay, AC bracket goes there, and then the brace attaches to those two empty bolt holes there on the water pump. Comes over and bolts into the top of the AC unit. I'm a little unsure of where the AC unit is going to line up in regard to the crank pulley, so that's going to be something I'm going to have to look into. I also have, I don't think I can get out the old condenser by just pulling the grill. I may have to move this, which means that this is gonna have to, I don't think it needs to come out, but certainly it needs to go forward probably. So anyway, we're gonna see how this is done, and it's gonna be a little bit of a trial and error for me here. This is something new. I've never worked with AC systems before. I'm reasonably sure I can get everything together. It's just a matter of figuring out how I'm going to get it together, and how complicated some of the stuff will be for me to get it together. So anyway, oh my God, here we go. Okay, so I've got the plate on. There were some spacers that they put in here, aluminum spacers, because they removed this, but this fits good. This fits good. It's in now. At least the bracket is. Got to tighten up the belt here a little bit, but otherwise it's in good shape. Removed the condenser. I just moved the radiator back just a little bit, and a couple of bolts, actually 4 bolts total, and it moved right out. I want to give you a look at, I'm assuming this is the original. This is pretty beefy, I have to say. I'll probably take off all these brackets and whatnot, but this is a beefy setup. This is driver's side right here, and this is the passenger side. This goes to the evaporator right here, and then this side here goes to the condenser. This is the, I forgot what they called it, but it's a, oh man, what's the name of it? This is the compression line. I remember what this is called. This is called the oil line here. Anyway, this is pretty beefy. Look at the way they set this up. There's tons of brackets, and the brackets hold the tubing very well. Now let's look at what the new, I just got this in the mail. It's not even close to being the same, but it's supposed to work, so we'll find out in a minute because I'm going to put it in. Brackets here, but there's nothing holding the tubes, you see. Nothing holding the tubes. Here's the driver's side. Now the driver's side one on the original one went down. This is straight out, which is going to be a little bit better, but we'll see how this baby goes in. It's going to go in next. Okay, I got the condenser in. Definitely shiny. If you can see down in there. But it bolted in pretty good. There's a couple of things that weren't an exact fit, I guess you could say, and that was these right here. The old body bolts, I'm not sure what they're called, were pretty stripped. I'm not sure you can see that, but it's corroded. This one is actually crooked. So I got new body bolts here, and they were quite a bit shorter, but they just approximated the size. They went in. You can see here, this one's a little bit crooked, so the brackets didn't necessarily show up in the right spots, but it was enough to finagle them in. So now I'm going to go ahead and pull this back and put the braces on here, which I painted up a little bit, and then we're all good to go. The fan shroud, I've got a new fan shroud that I don't know who had this truck and why they did it, but you can see here's the old fan shroud. They cut it in half to get it out. I have a new one here from Dennis Carpenter. Looks like a good fit. We'll see what happens when I get it in. Okay. So I went to bed last night, and the whole setup didn't sit with me very well because of the way these things were just sitting there with no braces. So I already cannibalized the brackets from the old condenser, which was the original condenser, and I just flipped them and fabricated them and use them. So I got a side bracket here, and then back in here I've got one that works for the up and down. This is the side to side. So this one here is pretty solid, actually. I just put a bolt in here and then used one of the clips. I'll turn it around here. Used one of the clips from the old condenser. Now on the other side, I'm not as happy with it. It's not as strong, but it's kind of hard to see. But I pulled the bracket off of here, off of the mount, and then bring it down so it's hanging sort of down, so it prevents a little bit of up and down action. The side to side, not so much, but the up and down is not strong, but it works, and that's braced right here. So I use the old brackets to go ahead and strengthen those sides so they don't bend, or at least they're a little bit less able to bend or get tweaked and then cause a leak. So we'll see if that works, but yeah, it kind of bothered me, man. I didn't want to leave it. I didn't want to do something half-assed, and though it's not perfect, you know, maybe it'll work. I don't know. Okay, I just got the belt on here. The belt is a 56. This runs on the third pulley down there, and it runs only the compressor. This little brace has a pulley on it that tightens the belt, and that's pretty much it. And then this down here runs the second belt, which runs the power steering. It's starting to rain right now. I've got the new shroud in. This shroud I got from Dennis Carpenter, and it fits pretty well. At the bottom there might be a little rubbing, but right now it's not rubbing. If it does, I'll have to figure out something to do, but it snapped in pretty well. I had to fab up some bolts here to get it to fit. So this is not OEM, but anything to get this on here. My other one was in 3 pieces. Somebody cut it. So I figured, since I was here, you know, that's my motto. While I'm here, I might as well. And so the shroud, this front part is all done. Now the hoses. Well, the hoses, and right there goes the evaporator and the accumulator. That's going to go in next, and then I can measure for my hoses. We'll see. I've got one hose here that comes from the evaporator to that point. Right here goes to the evaporator over there. That's the only thing they really sell OEM. So I've got 2 hoses to get. I got my suction line, which I think starts here, and it can go up and around, or it can go over. I'm not sure how I'm going to do it yet, but I'm going to have to fabricate it, which means I'm going to have to do a custom line. And then my discharge hose, which comes off here, goes right to here. And that's not a very long hose. I might have something for that, I don't know yet. But for sure I'm going to need to get a suction line hose. Now that hose will be, probably I'm going to get it from Vintage Air, and I'm going to use the Easy Clip system. If you haven't seen the Easy Clip system, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Now the parts are more expensive, but the ease of which you could potentially put a AC system together is just unmatched. It's very simple to do, and even if you screw up, you can unclip it, reorient the fitting, and then clip it back on. It's really quite amazing. So those are the two things next, and if I do the Easy Clip thing, I haven't ordered anything yet, then I'll make sure I get a video on it in this segment. So next, evaporator and the accumulator or the dryer's got to go in. Then we can measure everything up right. So right now everything looks good. I just have to tighten up some of these bolts here down for the power steering, and then this front end will be done. Okay. All right. Hang loose. Okay, it looks like everything is cleared. Got my new fan on here. It's kind of jiggling up top here, but everything's running pretty well here for the belt. For the belt down here to run the power steering, everything's spinning. Naturally, I won't be able to test the clutch until I get everything put in. But that's the way she looks right there. And just wanted to make sure she started up because I was messing around with the coil and moving it back to get the compressor in. It sort of hit the back of it. So I just wanted to make sure all my electrical connections were good and that I don't get a whoopsie when I get it all installed and have to go back and figure out what I did. So everything so far looks good. This right here plugs into the accumulator, and this is the line right here that goes over to the clutch. This line is, there's a bare wire somewhere here, right there, I think. So I'm going to replace this line. I haven't figured out what to do with it yet. I may Deutsch plug it, and I always love Deutsch plugging things because water can't get into the connections and corrode them. And if I do that, I'll show you what I'm going to do, but this line's definitely got to be removed. And this is where the evaporator goes inside this canister. This is a pain in the ass to get off. I've got some work to do in here. I probably need to look at the foam that's in here. I can hear a little foam loose inside the blower motor. So when we get that put in, I'll show you, and then the last step will be the hoses. I'll probably call somebody who deals with Vintage Air stuff today and see if I can fabricate a suction line. I only need about 5 feet. If I go around the back, then I only need about 5 feet of suction hose, which I may do. There's holes on the firewall back here that I could do 8/0 clips. There's a couple of 8/0 clip holes, I think, is the way it was done originally. If it wasn't done like that originally, it came over the top of the engine and then down to the accumulator. But right now everything looks good. Everything is, there's no rubbing on the fan from the shroud. That's the first time I've ever had that because the other shroud was totally destroyed by the previous owner. So right now, man, this is almost, you know, it's looking like it did when it came off the showroom. So I'm very happy about that. Okay, I was in here before, and you can kind of tell I had to remake this plate a long time ago because the other one was totally rusted and disintegrated, and I put some closed cell foam in there for a seal. I've got to do some cleaning up. This heat blend door needs to be a little bit refurbished and some new foam put on there. Down here is a drip plate, and I'm going to paint this, or at least spray paint with a rust reform, and get that done. And then I'm going to clean this up and, you know, wash it out. It's dusty still, but at the time, remember, I was removing the evaporator and the accumulator because they were old and just hanging there and also rusted together. So that was 2 years ago. So get the new evaporator one, and there's going to take some. It's going to take a little bit of cleanup here on this part. On the plate back here, I just used regular sheet metal, and then I spray painted it with the only paint I had. That's why it's red like this. And then I foamed around the areas where there would be contact made, because it was really disintegrating. It goes all around here, all around down there, and then all the way over to here. I got to take the blower motor off because I've got some foam in there, I think, that has come loose, and I'm just going to rip it out at this point, because I don't want to take the whole plenum, part of this plenum or whatever it's called, off. So this is going to come off next, and then I'll start prepping the area, and then maybe tomorrow we can get the new evaporator in. Okay, let's see what happens. Well, I had to stop the AC reinstall into the truck when I was fixing the blend door after I got the part of the evaporator core casing, plenum, whatever it's called, off. I was cleaning up the door and getting ready to reapply foam, and then all of a sudden there went slack, and this is the reason. This is the cable from inside the cab, and it obviously, as you can see here, separated. So I got a new cable on the way. It's going to be a couple days before it gets in, but because that came off, this is on the inside of the dash, up where the control is. It's a sliding control on a cable. This cable right here looks like it's original. This thing is pretty rusty. So that is going to put me on hold until I get this fixed. Maybe it's a good thing that it broke, actually, so I didn't have to take everything apart later on. I can get it all done at once. But, you know, nevertheless frustrating. So I'm on to something else, and I'll show you that in a second. Okay, we're into the vacuum test right now, and this has been sitting here for about 15 minutes. So far, so good. Got the vacuum pump that this is about $15 or so at Harbor Freight. Into the gauges. I have an interesting system. I have an R134 fitting on this end, but the rest of it that I replaced is stock. So I got the accumulator and the evaporator in. I had to fab a bracket for the accumulator to hold it in place, but I have the R12 fitting on this end, and my gauge system is for both 134 and R12, so it will work. But the biggest thing was getting that hose fabricated. I had to go to a shop to get it made. These here were big. Usually what you have on this end of these York compressors is a manual valve. The nut on it is bigger than R12, bigger than R10, bigger than a number 10 line fitting, but smaller than R12. Come to find out, they call it either a bead nut or they call it a turbo nut. So instead of trying to find manual valves to put back on here, I talked with the guy, and by the way, I got it from this place called Diesel Parts, and they make customized AC lines. Man, he was great. I'm gonna give them a shout out in the video. But he made a 90-degree off here, and I went all the way around the back and then ran the clutch line, which is the black with yellow stripes, up to the clutch. Now, a couple of other things here. I had to have this refashioned too. Once again, coming off the bead nut to a situation that is an 8 a number 8 line nut here. There's a little bit of a problem here because we this side has to be flared to fit over this condenser's pipe fitting and then seal it with the O-ring. This side is readily available. You can get this any place. It's sold. There's no fabrication that needs to be involved. They still sell this line. However, the problem was this is the only side, the only line they still sell. I believe this is I think this is a number 6. This is the oil line. So get a better shot here of this is a number 12. Comes all the way off the suction line, goes around to the compressor, and that's a bead nut on the other end. Then it goes from bead nut to the discharge line to the condenser, and so it goes from a bead nut size nut to a number 8. So right now we're just running the compression test here, and so far she's holding up. I mean, I've got 30. It's about 78 degrees, 75 degrees today. So it's doing well. This thing here worked well. The only thing you need to buy here extra is this end. So you can hook it up to your vacuum, your compressor. And what it does is it creates a vacuum in here and it sucks the air in. So I'm just sitting here waiting to see if I'm going to get any leakage. I'm going to let it sit for a while. So in the 1980 through 1982 Ford factory air pickup trucks, and mostly pickup trucks and maybe Broncos, this is the original heater control. It runs on a cable and it runs a flap to cut off the heater, or to cut off the heater and opening it to the AC, or cutting off the AC and opening it to the heater. And so this part always breaks. This is one of the parts that always breaks. It also breaks up here. I was able to repair this, but the problem is this is unfixable here. The cable here is about 40 inches long. So I actually have an OEM, new NOS OEM coming. But I wondered, this is a 1973, this is an EOTZ 19988-A. This is a hold on here, I'll get it. This is a D3TZ 18518B. Now, the problem is this here, if you string these things up, is about 3 inches longer. But the ends match, and they can hold the cable. So the question is, can a 1973 Ford, 73 through, I can't remember, 79 maybe, cable replace an EOTZ 19988? And that's what I'm going to try and find out today, because this is the only one I have. So I figured, why not try and find out. The D3TZ is easy to find. They make them today. Dennis Carpenter makes them. And so, but this part right here, the EOTZ part, holds everybody up. And I don't know if anybody's really tried the D3TZ one. It's the closest you can get to a the one that goes into 1980 to 1982 factory air situations. So I'm gonna hook it up and gonna see if it can actually be a workaround for the 1980. All right, let's see what happens. Okay, I have a problem with the system that I've been troubleshooting for a few days now, and that is that when I recharge through the low, through my manifold gauges, I only open the low side, and refrigerant will flow in, and I'll get cooling on the accumulator and some sweating, and then some definite sweating and really, really cold on the bottom of the evaporator. Problem is, when I come out the next morning, even a couple hours later, everything runs great and it's cool. But when I come out the next morning, the clutch will engage, turn off, engage, turn off. It'll be like this in terms of timing. Engage, off, engage, off, engage, off. Okay? So I've got about 3 cans in this. This is not the original sticker on this. I took this off a 1979 Ford F-150. I think, and it was at the pick and pull recently. Same bracket, same York compressor, same fittings. Just as an aside, I think it's either got a 351 Cleveland in it or a 351 modified. And if it's got a Cleveland in it, man, I'm gonna have to go check just to make sure. Because if it does, man, somebody should steal that engine out of that truck. I mean, it's just, you don't see those anymore. But anyway, so got one of these babies at Harbor Freight, and I proceeded to check around all the fittings. I didn't get anything that beeped, and so what I did is I started checking around just behind the clutch here. Now, if I roll this compressor, which I'm going to do a few times here, get it all nice and whatever's in there at least moved a little bit. And then we're going to turn this boy on. This is set at 5. So let me see if I can replicate. There we go. There we go. You can push the sensitivity up. I'll push it up 1. Here we go. Go back to the same spot. System's not really pressurized, so I don't know if I'm getting a false. I don't know if I'm getting a false flag here or what. Let's roll this thing around again. Let's see what we got. To kind of show you where this is at. I'll show you where it's at. It's just above the rubber. Okay, here is, I just put 2 ounces of oil into it, and just 1 can right now of refrigerant, and it's just now kicked on. There's my suction reading, a little above 40. My can's almost empty. I'm cool, not cold, but cool. I'm going to shut this off and look at the high side now. Just close it down and seal up the system and see what I got. It's not rattling as much as it used to, but it's still kind of rattling. You can probably see my belt do a little floppity through here. Okay, I'm running a diagnostic. This is the next morning. And I've got, my high pressure is building at 125. If you look at my low pressure, it's around 45. I did improper readings last time because I was a moron and I had these valves open, and so that was pegging this over to like 250, 300, and which gave me a false reading here. So I'm looking around 45. If we go inside, this is the first time that this is cold as hell, and it came on automatically, chilling. So I got day 2, did it yesterday. I got day 2, and my high pressure is building. It's about up to 150 now. If there anything that changes here, I'll let you know. Now, once again, a lot of my rattle, I think, is coming from my belt. I don't know why it's doing this, but it is. You can see it just flip-flopping here. I mean, everything is set right. The only thing I can think is maybe I don't know. I'm not sure what it could be. The tension on the tensioner pulley is good. I do not have a lot of the clickety-clackety. Well, maybe I do a little bit still from the compressor. But I'm going to let this run a little bit and see what happens. I really don't like this design. This is the original design. I haven't modified crap. So I tried to go as much as possible to it. You can see already my suction line is just sweating like a pig over here. Let's go see on the other side. It's very humid today. It's already in the high 80s. This baby is sweating like a pig. Which, well, look, it's already dripping down here too. He's dripping. Holy crap. I will have to say that I think that the adding of the 2 ounces of oil definitely helped matters. I'm a little bit north of 150 now. My low side is holding at about 40-ish. I'm going to let it run for a while. If anything changes, I'll get another one. You can hear some of the clickety-clacketing going on again. I don't know what this is from, but this has never happened before. This is sweating like a pig here. Which is good. I don't know what that's from. Now that clickety-clacketing never happened until I put the AC on. Looking at my pressure gauges again. We're looking pretty good, man. I think that's pretty good on the high side. I know on the low side this is good. Before, when I did this, since I have my gauges screwed up, I did it incorrectly. It was pegging up over in the 50s and 60s. It's too high, way too high. But now that I've done it right, hey man, live and learn. First time I've done anything like this. I can only think that that's the compressor. This is the clacky, gravelly sound that I was talking about before. And I will say this, since I added the oil, it's not as pronounced. So, what can you do? But look at this suction line has never sweat like this before. Never. So, I'm gonna say, man, it took probably 4 cans. And I'm not sure I really ever got 4 cans into it correctly the first time. So we'll see if this holds a charge. But today, 24 hours later, everything's good. You know, except for some of these noises that I really hate. I can't complain. Inside the cab, it's freezing. Freezing inside the cab right now. So anyway, I do want to give a shout out to Diesel Parts Ltd. They can do anything. Highly recommend them. He fashioned me this. It could have been a little bit longer, I think, but based on what I did is I took baling wire. And fashioned the hose on this side, and then the suction hose, which goes all the way around here to this side. Look at it, man, it's sweating over here too. This has never happened before. So obviously, I think I did something better, more correct this time, and got a good charge into it. That's the only thing I can think of. Plus 2 ounces of oil I put in there, so it's probably got somewhere around, yeah, it's probably got somewhere around, I think it says 7 to 8. I'm pretty sure I've got a good 6 in it now. So if I ever wanted to add another can, which I finally figured out how to do correctly, I'll show you here, through this little guy, then it works, you know, it works pretty well. So anyway, there you go. Okay, so the ongoing problems with the AC continues. I've thought I've had a leak. I had a sniffer, which I returned from Harbor Freight. It just was unreliable. My door opened here. And so what I did is I went and got some dye. I'll show you what I used here. Just a little bottle of dye right there. Let me roll the light on it. You can see it glowing as soon as you put the light on it. See that? That yellow really lights up, especially there at the bottom. And might be able to show you here what got a little bit on my hand when my glove was off. You can probably see that right there. You hit this. It's pretty easy to see with the black light. So I'm going to check tonight. I did a prelim check as best I could by darkening up the under the hood here with my blanket there. And nothing here has been touched. The only thing I did was I added an O-ring to the bottom of these caps because I don't know, you never know. You screw these things down, it could hit the valve, and maybe a little bit escapes with the valve. But here's my problem with all of this. It sat for probably a week, and because I'm fixing something else. I fixed that blend door, which is behind the evaporator there. And I looked all over for oil before I got the dye. I couldn't find any oil anywhere. A little bit of oil in the caps here, which is why I put the O-ring inside the cap, so to give it more space between it and the valve. I did it on the high side. Excuse me, cigar. And I did it on the low side over there. I let it sit for an hour after I did the dye, and I checked the caps with the black light, and it would show up like it did on my hand. I did it inside, darken it up a little bit, and there was no residual glow. So also another thing that I thought was interesting, I put the dye in excuse me, I put the dye in the hose lines of my manifold gauges here, which I have to say that they're from Harbor Freight. They have worked excellent for my purposes. And so I put the dye in the hose lines. I got a can of refrigerant hooked in. I blended it through the blend port, the little blend port here on the gauge itself, away from the car, so there's no chance of dye getting in it. Then I hooked up the manifold gauges. Now, if my system was leaking, I should have had no pressure in the system. That is, when I first started putting the can in, the compressor here wouldn't have really come on. It might have sucked the refrigerant in, and the clutch might have engaged a little bit, but it would have not stayed on. I didn't even get a third of a can in, and the clutch came on right away. It stayed on, and it blew colder than hell inside the cab. So I only put one can of refrigerant in. So this tells me that my system is holding a charge to a certain extent. Before, remember, or I probably didn't document this, that for the last 5 days, what would happen is I'd go in and turn on the AC, and the clutch would engage, disengage, engage, disengage, engage, disengage. And that meant I had something in the system, but it wouldn't cool. So I got a third of a can. I put a whole can in, but on the can was only just almost immediately when I opened up the low side suction side. This came on and it blew cold air immediately. Everything started sweating here. The accumulator sweat like a pig. Everything was sweating that should be sweating almost immediately. And then I ran a black light over everything, just a preliminary check. It was right around noon. And you can see it, but it makes it more difficult to see the dye, if you know what I mean. There goes my friend on a CVO Harley. And so I'm going to wait for it to be dusk, and then I'm going to check it tonight and see if there's anything that I can see. But, you know, this stuff works great. I have to say, I mean, it's a pain in the ass to get off, you know, and I tried washing my hands. So what you're seeing here, that residual dye on my hand, that little bit I got this when I unscrewed the lines on the side that I introduced the dye in. There was just a little bit around the tip because I had to pour it into the hose, and then I put the refrigerant line on there and then bled the line just enough until it came out. Most of the time I wore gloves, but when I was undoing the lines I didn't have my gloves on, so that's how it got on my hand here. So anyway, I'll check tonight and see what I can see. If there's the conundrum is that it holds a charge, or it seems to hold something of a charge after a week, but it wasn't cooling, but the clutch was engaging quickly and turning off quickly. So that tells me that it's holding something, but I don't know. I'm totally baffled by this. We'll see tonight when the sun starts going down if I can see anything in there. I'll check all over the condenser. I'll check around the accumulator and the lines of the evaporator that go into the accumulator. I just can't imagine that the evaporator would have a pinhole in it. It's brand new. Everything is brand new in it. So, you know, I guess it's possible. But when I did the blend door, I could see one side of the evaporator, and the evaporator didn't have any oil. I didn't have the dye in it, but it didn't have any oil at the time. So we'll check on this later and see what happens. I should tell you that it seems like a lot to me. It seems to be holding a charge, but the can I put in it today with the dye was can number 6. That's what seems like a lot to me. I would imagine, I was thinking it should probably take 4-ish. I do not have a decal on this truck. It has been removed. I do have an amazing big line that goes around the back here of it to the accumulator. This is a size 12 line, which is standard. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it. The rest of the lines are to spec. This is an 8, that's a 6. That's what it would have in it originally. And I'm also just thinking it would have had a number 12 line on the suction. But I think I have it routed differently. I think it would have been much shorter. I think it would have come over the top here and then maybe bypass under this and then into the accumulator. But I don't know if that extra line would be the cause of wanting to have so much refrigerant. So I've got two problems. Either I have a leak and I've put 6 cans in it and it is leaking somewhere, or by some freaking magical mystery tour thing, it needs 6 cans in it. But I have no idea. If I would have put the can with the dye in it today, I had an extra can, but if it was empty, it wouldn't have fired off as soon as I started introducing the refrigerant and dye into the system. It seems to me that the clutch would have engaged and then shut off, and then engaged and shut off again if it was truly empty. So anyway, whew, it's like an AC soap opera. Well, these are the days of our air conditioning lives. I'll get some pictures up probably while I'm discussing this section of it. As you know, I put some dye into the system, and then I ran it. I only really put in a can. It was like 5 days of sitting, and then I put some dye into it. Even before, as soon as I put the can into the suction line with the dye, the clutch engaged and didn't stop. And then it was daytime, so I couldn't really see a lot. So I really waited, and I didn't see anything actually. I looked at all the lines, I looked at the compressor, I went underneath and looked at the compressor. At this point, I can only say that my initial reaction to the compressor seal being bad from the get was incorrect. Now, the reason why I said that, if you go back through this video, you're going to see me with an electronic sniffer, and the electronic sniffer was always setting off right here behind the clutch. And the problem with that was the sniffer also seemed to be working well, but I could never see anything, let's say oil, coming out of the clutch. Well, then the sniffer started going off even when I just started it up in fresh air. That is, I think it was giving me false positives all the way around. I think it was a defective unit. So I got rid of that unit, returned it, and I decided to go with the old-fashioned dye method, which I did. And what happened was I saw nothing until nighttime when I came out. It's much easier to see this stuff at night, especially if you have a slight hole, a very slow leak. There was nothing that I could see at night on the condenser here. There was nothing around these lines that I could see. No oil, no glow. I got 2 connections over here on the accumulator, actually. Yeah, I've got two connections on the accumulator. One, the suction line. One comes out of the evap. And then the oil line, which also comes out of the evap, the bottom of the evap, and then goes into the condenser. Nothing. Until I started shining right here. There was a small hole on this crimp. and it was leaking right around in here and slowly dripping, and then you can see just a little bit of the traction of the oil, which was so slight that I could not see it by the naked eye. I'm blind a little bit, so you know, what can you do? But there was just oil here, no dye. The dye was all around here and especially underneath right there. And it lit up like, you know, a freaking ghost at midnight. So I took the line off yesterday, took it back to the guy who made it. They fixed it, recrimped it, gave me new O-rings, and I put it on yesterday. And then I put 2 cans in, and the compressor went, so I stopped. My pressure was looking good on my gauge. I think I have a picture of that I'll throw up. It was right around 35, and the high pressure side was right around 200, perfectly within spec. So we'll see if it helped today.